Welcome back. This session is designed to help you excel in America in Bloom criteria. We've asked 7 judges to take a deep dive into community vitality, flowers, landscaped areas, urban forestry, environmental efforts, celebrating heritage, and overall impression. You'll be taking a lot of notes during this session. Thank you so much to these judges for sharing their knowledge. Teresa Woodward, Lori Waller, Cheryl Corson, Douglas Earhart, Nikki Springer, Barbara Vincenson, and Karen Rendell.
Hello from Columbus, Ohio. I'm talking here about what judges are looking for in the community vitality criteria and how to go from scoring 1 point for launching to 4 points for excelling. And thanks to all of you, I have a lot of great examples to share. Let's begin by looking at a definition. Personally, I define community vitality as the heartbeat of a community, but let's review the official one from the score sheet. It's policies, programs, activities, and facilities that lead to a vibrant community and sense of well-being. Includes libraries, community centers, arts, cultural museums, and parks, playgrounds, dog parks, sports fields, water activities, trails, and other outdoor recreation opportunities. From the looks of this definition, you might think only communities with deep pockets score well here, but that's not the case. Judges give the top scores to communities like St. Michael's, Maryland, that won the 2019 Community Vitality Award for embracing its resources and tapping volunteers to host a number of sporting events and community festivals. So let's dig into the specifics. Starting at the top of the sheet with leadership and policy. Here we look at municipal volunteer boards. Logan, Ohio scores excelling for pulling together downtown businesses, community leaders, and nonprofit groups to host a symposium with a keynote presentation by the mayor of another AIB community, Ottawa, Illinois. The event spurred some great conversations about continued community development. We also look at municipal grants to neighborhoods like Calabasas, who handles landscape contracts with 13 HOAs and stepped in to assist this one aging community that was renovating its buildings and updating its landscape. Master plans for green spaces also fall under leadership and planning. In 2008 in Waverly, Iowa, the community was hit by a devastating flood that damaged 700 homes and 100 businesses. The city smartly used millions of state and federal dollars for flood mitigation projects, which included acquiring floodplains and turning them into green spaces. Today, thanks to a master plan, the riverfront is protected and now a focal recreation area. The score sheet also allows points for promoting alternative transportation in communities like Ridgeland, Mississippi, with its 14-mile trail network tied to the Natchez Trace Parkway, and River Rouge that installed bike lanes along a corridor connecting its community with another. Beyond leadership and policy, judges look at the physical facilities and events. In West Chicago, Turtle Splash Park scored excelling, not just for its great water park, but for its accessible design and educational gardens at the entry. A butterfly garden and a water garden complete with turtles, of course. In Holliston, we were wowed by the backstory of Pinecrest Golf Club that the village rallied to purchase from a developer. The course maintains valuable green space and has lovely landscape maintained by volunteers. In Mansfield, a carousel revived a struggling downtown and attracted a host of other children's facilities, including a children's theater, children's museum, ice cream shop, and annual children's festival. One event that blew me away was the Hoops Project along the Ohio River in downtown Gallipolis. The community shuts down the streets, hauls in basketball hoops, and hosts a basketball tournament that packs the town with out-of-town visitors for a whole weekend. Within the facility and events category, we specifically award points for biking and hiking trails. As I mentioned earlier, Ridgeland is a star. Here is a landlocked wooded property that a mountain biking group voluntarily transformed into a series of trails and now hosts major events like BMX races, Fat Tire Festival, and beginner mountain biking workshops. In Athens, Ohio, home to Ohio University, students and residents enjoy a 21-mile bikeway along the Hocking River. We loved how these bike racks are designed to honor Athens' brick-lined streets and history of brick making. Athens also scores well when it comes to the arts. At Passionworks Studio, artists with developmental disabilities partner with pros to collaborate on amazing pieces like these flower sculptures and costumes for the annual Halloween parade. Also at a neglected pocket park by the Old Armory, OU students designed the outline of a mural, then invited community members to join in painting the colors. West Chicago is another standout when it comes to art projects. They scored excelling for bringing in guest artists for public art collaboratives, like this letter mural, plus the butterfly effect installation of 29 individually embellished butterfly sculptures in public gardens throughout the city. Mansfield, Ohio scored big with its Brickyard. The community began hosting concerts in downtown parking lots surrounded by brick buildings filled with a craft brewery, restaurants, and businesses. Eventually, it became known as the Brickyard. One couple even hosted their wedding there and invited the whole community. Madisonville's chalkboard caught the judge's attention as it challenged residents to respond in chalk to "When I Dream About My Community." Also, Greenwood, South Carolina has garnered much attention for its downtown topiaries on display during its annual Festival of Flowers event. Less glamorous, but also point-worthy, are shade structures, shade trees, and shade sails like these at Calabasas, California. The score sheet also recognizes run, walk, bike, and kayak events. Judges love when communities tie their sporting events to their history, like the Shawshank 7K Hustle that celebrates the filming legacy of Shawshank Redemption at the Ohio Reformatory. Points are also awarded for play areas, like the Sensory Park created by a group of parents in Holliston, Massachusetts. And libraries like this one in Waverly with a butterfly garden for storytime activities. Other communities like Holliston and Clyde, Ohio, double dip into historic preservation by preserving their treasured Carnegie libraries. Other gain points to community centers like Hawthorne Woods Village Hall for reinforcing its rural by design motto. And farmers markets like Greenwood's Upton Market for embracing its railroad past. The last section of the Community Vitality Score Sheet looks at community involvement. Here points are awarded for community gardens, like those in Mansfield, Ohio, with 75 different ones. Or Ottawa, with its Plant a Row for the Hungry, school gardens, and edible plants in downtown landscapes. More points are awarded for food banks and hunger relief efforts, like this abandoned grocery store purchased by a group of churches in West Chicago and reopened as an exceptional food pantry. Civic events like Bike to Work Days earn points, as well as youth events like these clever online activities from Hawthorne Woods during the pandemic. And volunteer recognition events like those in Holliston and Greendale, Indiana. Finally, judges are given an opportunity to award up to 4 points for an item of special note. For Waverly, my fellow judge and I awarded 4 points for an amphitheater at Coleman Park along Cedar River in Waverly. Remember the once flooded community mentioned earlier with its master plan. Here, a mom recruited her daughter and friend, both architecture students at Iowa State, to design this unique structure, which was then built with state tourism grant dollars. Today, it's the centerpiece of this riverfront park. I thank you for your time and welcome your questions.
I'm Laurie Waller. I've been involved with America in Bloom for 11 years. For 10 of those years, I worked as my community's floral displays director, designing and sourcing for 70 containers and hanging baskets in several landscaped areas. For the last 4 years, I have had the honor of being a national judge. As we move through this presentation, I will be referencing what judges look for and what I did as a community volunteer. First, let's look at the metric rating scale. NA, or not applicable, means your score is not impacted by this. Judges want cities to complete every metric. However, sometimes it just can't happen. Not started. The program or procedure is not in place. An example of this might be the lack of participation by volunteer groups. Launched indicates that things are happening, but not to the highest and fullest benefit. Achieved is when programs and procedures are in place, but could be improved upon. An example of this might be creating a cohesive floral story in the community. A surpassing mark indicates that programs and procedures are in place and well implemented. An example of surpassing would be a cohesive floral color and texture story that is reflected throughout the community in containers and landscape, creating a breathtaking view for onlookers. And finally, excelling is where programs and procedures are exceptional. There's a unified floral story integrated throughout the community with floriferous, healthy plants and landscape and containers throughout business and residential areas, leaving judges with no opportunity to suggest improvement. Each area of the metric is vital to the success of the floral program. Let's look at leadership and policy. Whether it's public or private, or one person or a committee managing the flower displays, they must be managed. Planning, ordering, planting, and maintaining are all equally important. Pollinator habitat is a vital focus point as we work to reduce the use of insecticidal abatement chemicals in the public and private sector and restore a natural balance between pests and beneficial insects. Cities who have the greatest success with their floral displays have researched the best plants for their area and for the location of the plants. The soil is properly mixed and extended release fertilizer is included. Many cities order their plants during the summer or fall for the coming spring-summer planting. They have regularly scheduled work parties to maintain displays. Recognition of business and residential displays encourages continued beautification. AIB judges use door hanger. Many communities honor lovely landscapes with signs and certificates. Where demonstration gardens have been installed, adding an informational sign will educate visitors. Where signs aren't a good fit, small QR code signs allow visitors to scan the code and land at a website filled with information about the garden, including selection and care of the plants. Labeling plants can be low budget, organic, and attractive, as seen with this large cobble with a label. As you can see in the photo, calibrachoa and petunias are consistent in the line of baskets. Plants should be hardy and not fussy. Displays are placed throughout the community, and place those displays where they can soften or hide the industrial feel in an empty area to create a welcoming spot for sitting or dining. This succulent wall softened a brick wall in a parking lot. As my city's floral displays director, I created a theme and color story for each planting and chose plants that performed well in high traffic areas, ones that were bright and vibrant. Our main street is a state highway complete with big rig traffic. Each season's design is curated to become, quote, 15-mile-an-hour containers, end quote, thus slowing the traffic and making alfresco dining and strolling along the street more enjoyable. Fellow judge Sue Amatangelo, author of the book The ABCs of Creative Container Gardens, taught me this formula for creating stunning 15-mile-an-hour containers. Filler, spiller, thriller, killer. Let's briefly unpack that. A filler plant does just that. It fills the pot. A spiller plant that cascades down and draws the eye often hides the container and creates interest. A thriller is a tall, showy plant that lifts the eye, and a killer is a strikingly tall plant that towers and delights, as we see in this photo. Does the community display lights, greenery, pumpkins, cornucopias, flags, and other types of seasonal displays? Include photos in your community profile. Are the hanging baskets small enough or large enough for the location? AIB Community Greendale, Indiana created small, lower-mounted hanging baskets for displays in neighborhoods on lower height stop signs and street signs, and kept them low enough for sightlines and baskets proportionate to the sign. Are the containers too large for the sidewalk or too small? Are the foundation plants and landscape proportionate to the flower bed? Are the bedding plants complementary or competing with the foundation plants and landscape? In this photo, the baskets are full but not impeding foot traffic or sightlines. Flowers used are complementary and unified. A whimsical planter bed incorporated annuals planted in unusual containers to create the foundation rather than using shrubs. Color blocking, in addition to more airy foundation plants, created an eye-catching display. Color and form create interest in this display used to soften a parking area along a historic commercial street. Baskets have a bit of height with the addition of osteospermum daisies and Angara. Maintenance is vital to floral displays. Regular watering and supplemental watering when blisteringly hot weather comes. Regular fertilizing as well as time-released fertilizer help maintain healthy containers and are the foundation of good integrated pest management. Regular grooming and deadheading keeps displays looking fresh and attractive. Sometimes something will vector in like aphids or powdery mildew. Judges want to know what practices you are using and if you are choosing plants that are more resistant to damage. Do your displays show disease? In this display, the wall remained healthy. However, the following year, botrytis attacked the plants and spoiled the effect. Community involvement engenders pride in the community. When citizens and civic groups volunteer to maintain displays in the community, others see the beauty and wish to join in. Those volunteers develop a sense of pride, of ownership. Judges' discretion points are given when there's something unique, like a May Day celebration with flower displays in the square, or a delightful artistic display to welcome springtime, or a floral display that makes you stop just to look at the combination. 3 or 4 points can be given. Thank you for participating and making your community the best it can be. Happy planting!
Hello, America in Bloom 2020 Symposium attendees. I am Cheryl Corson, and we are here to spend a few minutes speaking about the landscaped areas criterion in the judging. So let's get started. Here are some slides, images of me at work, wearing many hats. I'm here as a AIB judge when I'm not a playground safety inspector or a landscape architect or a dirt gardener. So in the landscaped areas criterion, there are several categories: leadership and policy, plan of action, design, maintenance, and community involvement. This distinguishes landscaped areas from flowers and from urban forestry because it is treating the subject matter as an aggregate of all of these things, and it's less about the particular plant and more about what goes into the decision making, the planning, the execution, and the maintenance of the entire landscaped areas as a whole. What makes for a good score in this criterion? Leadership and policy would tell us that the presence of and the management of public areas is not population dependent. I will give credit to all these communities in my last slide in the interest of time, but here we have a streetscape in which there are plantings. There's relief from the heat, that the plantings are coordinated with the accessibility. You see the curb cut, you see the trash can, the recycling, you see signage, you see shade, you see seating in public areas. And all of this and managing all of this is part of the leadership and policy metric in this criterion. So is the presence of a municipal landscape ordinance for both residential and commercial properties. Again, a smaller town of 13,000 that nonetheless not only has a municipal ordinance, but communicates it easily to the public through its website. Easy to use, not a lot of bells and whistles, but gets the point across, and there's a public awareness that this is something to pay attention to. Once you have that in place, how do you then plan for the management of public areas so that invasives don't get out of control, that you have a natural area that you want to maintain, that you are able to allocate resources, materials as needed, and when they're needed, right? That you have some kind of recognition program for attractive landscapes in place. And so a beautiful sign, it could have the America in Bloom logo. It could mention the sponsoring organization that gives the award, and that sign gets moved from place to place, might get some press coverage, and it's a PR opportunity for the recipient and for the giver of the award. Are there demonstration gardens in place, and do those demonstration gardens have interpretive signage? And if so, is that signage effective? This is not budget dependent. The middle image has a very fancy metal sign that has a QR code. You can point your phone at it. But on the left is just something that's laminated at a very low production cost, but it tells an interesting story about the plant. It hooks in the visitor. On the right, you have a very modest giveaway that people can take a list of what the plants are in that particular garden and learn about pollinator plants and take that home so they can do it themselves. Those are good examples of excellent interpretive signage in a demonstration garden. In the design category, we are not just thinking about begonias here or petunias here, we are thinking about where are the plantings? How do they unify the streetscape? Do they occur in key municipal locations like the post office where people go every day, or at main intersections in town where they also serve as wayfinding, or in the case on the right as a welcoming area for seating and some shade and some just beauty and presence in the downtown of this particular town. The slides I'll identify at the end. And then again, a town of under 2,000, but we have a bridge that used to be a trolley track between two communities in New England, and it has been a floral feature since the 1920s, the Bridge of Flowers. You can look it up, and there's a very modestly priced, not expensive guest book. You can see, I can tell you that there are people from all over the world that come to this thing. So the design is, it doesn't have to be a big budget thing. It doesn't have to be a big community to be effective. Once that's all in place, how do you maintain it? You can Google my name and the title, the maintenance, or just landscape maintenance. This is a publication that was funded by the District of Columbia with the provision that it was free to anybody who wants it. So it's online, you can download it. Lots of good material there. On the right, we have a very strategic planting of carex that breaks up the lawn area and protects the trees from encroaching mowers and weed whackers. We have a very attractive, even at this time of year, early spring, rain garden bioretention planting. Okay, there's one little can tossed in there, but basically very well maintained, ready to go for early spring. And on the right, a mulching mower so that those nutrients are being put back into the turf, because turf health is a metric in this criterion. Community involvement is critical. No matter how big or small a community is, there needs to be buy-in. So here we have on the left, a neighborhood bioretention, community members working at it. On the right, we have an urban, Washington, D.C. urban job training program for youth in landscape maintenance. They are taking care of the community, the housing development in which they live, and they're visible. They have T-shirts, and they are very proud of the work that they do, and the residents to whom they are related are proud of them. Community involvement also involves education. On the left, we have a new AIB judge, Dave Hirschman, giving a demonstration to not just staff, but also volunteers. Community involvement involves training. The training should occur multiple times a year. And this is how we identify what's an invasive, what's a weed, what's this plant going to do, what is it doing. It's public education, it's community pride, as is the image on the right from Castle Rock, Washington, where people that are gardening in a community garden are offering produce to folks who would like some produce and would need that produce. Again, it gets tremendous buy-in and community esprit de corps, community morale. So these are some examples of outstanding aspects of the different metrics in this criterion. These are the communities that whose work I showed in this short presentation, and I am looking very much forward to a further discussion, think about some questions, and we will be able to talk about this during the live chat part of the symposium. Thank you so much. This has been Cheryl Corson, and a pleasure to speak with you about landscaped areas.
Greetings to all, and welcome to the programs concerning urban forestry. This is forestry because it concerns trees. This is urban because our community creates a harsh environment that competes with healthy forests. Trees have been important to people for a long time. 25 centuries ago, the Chinese philosopher Confucius considered how people think. If you think in terms of 1 year, plant a seed. In terms of 10 years, plant trees. But in terms of 100 years, then you should be teaching the people. This presentation is designed to teach a little bit about how trees can improve community well-being and how urban forestry can grow community pride. The urban forestry definition emphasizes variety of trees, the programs, and the practices needed for keeping trees healthy, both public and private trees. There are 5 main considerations listed here, with the number of factors involved for a total of 20. The bottom half of these, items C, D, and E, concern the best management practices for trees. They are the what, when, and how of proper tree care. The crux of urban forestry success is in the top half, A and B, the where, why, and who of administration are involved and will engage actions that ensure the practices actually do occur and persist annually. Here are the key words in that criterion. If your programming addresses any of these dozen subjects, you will be achieving improvements in the urban forestry criterion. One caution, however, the memorial trees aspect should be about a program, not about individual trees that might die and need to be replaced. Your state has a forestry department, and it may have urban and community forestry included. We recommend contacting your local or regional forestry office or area forester to solicit assistance or learn about existing programs you might mimic. Consider asking your county extension office to provide such support, or at least have suggestions and information as well. The primary support for urban forestry programming in our nation is the Arbor Day Foundation. They have multiple programs to support the development of tree-related activities. This is a cost-based association, so there are application fees. Attaining status as Tree City USA is the hallmark achievement of success in the American Bloom Urban Forestry Criterion. Being such, it takes some work, as we will discuss next. However, if your community has its own electric utility department, then you might initially consider using their tree-related activities to attain status as a Tree Line USA, Both of these recognitions are lofty goals for urban forestry programs. The Tree City USA has 4 standards: develop a tree board, enact an ordinance, spend money on trees, celebrate Arbor Day. But I recommend you consider these in almost reverse order. The easiest project is to celebrate Arbor Day in your community with a mayoral proclamation and ceremony. Many communities plant trees for this occasion, sometimes at schools to gain participation from youth, or at community properties and parks to involve residents. Many communities have tree giveaway programs using state-grown seedlings and coordinating with the state forestry or urban forestry offices. Next, the community must document that they spend $2 per person on trees each year. This may sound like a lot, but you can describe that your community already has curbside collection for leaves, landscape debris, cut or fallen tree branches, and limbs and chunks of trunks, either for general street cleanup or after storm events. You can also add the pruning needed for utility line clearance. And don't forget about those branches that block the stop signs, the road caution signs, and your own visibility at street intersections. Whether they are contracted services or you have community staff and equipment, these fees count in this requirement. Remember to add in the fuel, the tires, the motor oil, and regular service costs to operate the trucks, the vacuums, and chipper equipment, and the hourly wages and benefits of the drivers and the ground crews. These usually add up to a large sum, close enough to meet the requirement. When you add in the time that volunteers serve for your community involvement, that also counts. You just have to keep good records and report them in a summary report each year with your Tree City USA renewal application. Thirdly, you need to organize a tree board, a community group of 8 to a dozen officials and residents, which provides direction and advice for the care of community trees. Many boards lay claim to protecting, preserving, and improving the quantity and quality of the community trees. Most are awarded responsibility for only public-owned trees. The private sector is complicated. The boards have publicly announced regular meetings 6 to 12 times per year, held on a regular day, a regular hour, and a regular location, so the residents of the community can attend if they wish. Please note that an official paid community staff forester, utility forester, urban forester, tree warden, or other such titled position is not a requirement, even though that is the first question on the Criterion metrics. But a qualified or trained contractor or consultant will count for this. In the history of Tree City USA programming, a majority of communities have persuaded their officials and budget committees to create and hire qualified individuals for such positions. Be the Lorax for your community. The fourth requirement is probably the hardest to achieve, but it is the best basis for an effective tree program in any community. The community must have a tree ordinance legalized and enacted into its codes of operation. It provides the opportunity to ensure that good policies and procedures are developed and that they become normal behavior. It helps determine expected goals and actions for implementing an effective plan of work and for documenting annual tree care activities. The Society of Municipal Arborists provides training and resources for preparation of such codes and ordinances. They offer an excellent annual training program, the Municipal Forestry Institute, which is held in February at the Arbor Day Foundation office. Thank you all for your attention. We hope this has helped broaden your understanding of the aspects of urban forestry in the America in Bloom programming.
Hello from Orlando, Florida. I'm Nikki, a second-year judge with AIB, and I'm going to review the environmental efforts category. First, let's define what AIB is looking for in environmental innovations. For this category, AIB is looking for environmental leadership, policies, plans, and programs targeted at resource conservation, pollution control, trash, recycling and reuse, and the use of alternative fuel vehicles. The environmental efforts section is divided into 5 categories. The first category is leadership and policy. First and foremost, AIB wants to encourage communities to take on leadership roles and to encourage environmentally conscious behavior for residents and visitors. We know that some of these criteria, such as the use of electric vehicle fleets and charging stations, can be a big capital investment for small communities. However, several of these criteria don't require capital investment and can go a long way toward fostering an environmentally minded population, even with limited resources. Establishing an environmental leadership board or green team with even a few municipal employees and interested citizens can kick things off. This is a great opportunity to work with high school age students and offer opportunities for community leadership, top-level scout badges, and provide meaningful volunteer hours often necessary for college scholarships. The second category is to develop a plan of action. If this seems daunting, don't try to reinvent the wheel. Rather, look toward other similar-sized communities in your region and review their environmental or sustainability action plans. If possible, tour a neighboring community and learn from what they have in place, and perhaps even where they may have been unsuccessful on certain initiatives. In doing so, you can also discuss ways that your communities could support one another and work together on larger initiatives. A plan of action need not be static, nor does it need to be a big, expensive document. The most nimble and flexible of plans allow for creativity and adaptation, 2 necessary components of successful environmental initiatives. Once a community-specific goal is in place, the Green Team can look toward national, state, and regional level grant programs to begin supporting more capital-intensive work. In addition to actual dollars, the programs often offer a good deal of instruction, guidance, and support, and can be a great way for communities to learn successful strategies and expand their network of like-minded leaders. The third category focuses on resource conservation, primarily water and energy. For water, AIB focuses on reducing potable water consumption within homes and buildings and minimizing water for irrigation through the use of reclaimed water and the development of native and drought-tolerant landscapes. In regard to energy, AIB encourages the availability of home energy audits and greater availability of incentives that encourage residents to upgrade to energy-saving technologies. AIB recognizes that some of the items in this category require partnership with local utility companies or other regional municipal agencies. Still others can be supported through partnerships with local businesses, such as partnering with a local hardware store to provide discounts on rain barrels or irrigation timers. Still others can be achieved with more casual relationships with local scouting or nonprofit groups and little to no capital investment, such as the marking of storm sewers with spray paint and stencils to remind residents of the consequences of dumping pollutants and trash into storm sewers. Such initiatives are a great way of involving children and families as well. The fourth category covers trash, recycling, and reuse management. As with the previous category, many of the actions in this category may require partnering with local or regional municipal agencies, such as for curbside trash and recycling collection. However, we encourage communities to look for creative ways of achieving some of the other category items, such as partnerships with local community gardening groups to aid in identifying and managing compost sites for yard waste, or partnering with local drugstores, police stations, or community hospitals to set up sites for prescription drug disposal services. Additionally, there are myriad options to facilitate recycling and resource use via social media platforms, such as Nextdoor or local yard sale or buy nothing groups on Facebook. Also look for creative ways to piggyback on other existing community activities. For example, a local house of worship might host an annual rummage sale and then work with other volunteer groups to sort the unsold items and ensure they are collected by service organizations like Goodwill or taken to the appropriate recycling centers for proper disposal. Perhaps a high school scout troop could foster a collection and pickup of unwanted or outdated electronics from a retirement community and drop those items at a recycling center, thereby avoiding the potential of those items being discarded in the weekly trash. The fifth and final category, and perhaps the most important, is community involvement. Educating the community about the immense impact their actions have is empowering to all age groups and fundamental in the hope of a more sustainable future. In addition to annual celebrations for Earth Day and Arbor Day, AIB encourages communities to celebrate what makes a difference in their local region and help residents understand the specific environmental concerns pressing in their location. AIB also encourages partnering with local gardening clubs, soil and water conservation districts, and school and scout groups at all levels. In addition to the 5 established categories, judges can award up to 4 points for special or exceptional environmental initiatives. These judges' discretion items can be creative examples of some of the items we've just discussed, or capture a program or initiative that doesn't fit well anywhere else. We encourage communities to highlight these special ideas in their profile reports and tour sessions. For additional and inspirational ideas, we encourage you to look at some of our top scoring communities in recent years, including Calabasas and Arroyo Grande, both in California, as well as Holland, Michigan, Lexington, Kentucky, Tavares and Winter Park, Florida, Superior, Wisconsin, and St. Charles and Hawthorne Woods, both in Illinois. I thank you for your time and welcome your questions.
Good afternoon. My name is Barbara Vincenson, and I am a judge with America in Bloom, here today to discuss heritage with you. As you know, celebrating heritage is one of the 7 sections of the America in Bloom program. Heritage means many things to many people. Put broadly, we can categorize the subject to make our rather short discussion a bit more precise. At the most basic level, heritage can be divided into 2 categories, both natural heritage and cultural heritage. Natural heritage includes flora and fauna, ecosystem, geologic structures, and the like. So, for example, an historic tree in your city could easily become part of the natural heritage on a heritage tour. Cultural heritage can be further divided into both tangible cultural heritage and intangible cultural heritage. So tangible culture includes the built environment and architectural heritage, buildings, cities, neighborhoods within cities, monuments, art, artifacts. Intangible culture includes folklore tradition, language, customs and beliefs, and music. One need only to travel to a country where both customs and beliefs and language are different from what one is used to know how very important these are in our cultural heritage. So we're going to take tangible culture and further divide that. One division of tangible culture is agricultural. And agricultural can include barns, silos, storage facilities. Also includes areas where animals are raised, which includes their pasture lands, and the fields where the farmers grow grains. Agricultural heritage can be brought into the community by, for example, bringing a farmer's market into the downtown. This clearly brings the agricultural heritage into the town much more strongly than going to the downtown supermarket. Yet another one is, as this town has done, is to add a display at the entry to a park, and the display includes historic equipment that was once used on the farm. This now brings it into everyday trips to the park. Another subdivision would be industry. For example, in Bethlehem Steel, the steel industry formed the town of Bethlehem as it became the second largest steel manufacturer in the world. Today, with Bethlehem Steel no longer in business, it still forms a lot of the culture of Bethlehem, although not in quite the same way. Art and architecture definitely impact us. In the photographs, pictured here, there is an historic building in an area outside Philadelphia, built to a very specific architectural style. It was used as a one-room schoolhouse, and I'm very happy to say it is now in the Register of Historic Places, is used as a museum, and continues its role as a very visible symbol of strategies to preserve heritage for the enjoyment of current and future generations can be divided into several different categories, including protection, identification, action and participation, education, commemoration, and celebration. Under the area of protection, one of the very important needs is to establish and maintain a local historic preservation ordinance with guidance for renovation and protection against demolition. As part of that ordinance, need an architectural review board or a historic review board in place to enforce both local zoning and preservation ordinances. Once those are in place, it's time to identify districts and individual structures eligible for designation. Notice the difference there. Once identified, it becomes very important to designate those districts and structures so that they fall under the guise of the zoning and historic preservation ordinance. Having National Register of Historic Places designation in place is excellent as well, although one needs to be aware, although this includes guidelines, it does not provide protection for historic sites. Identification, the maps, which show clearly the outlines of the district, should be helped along with signs, possibly on the street signs, to indicate the boundaries of these districts to people who are walking or driving in the area. Also, clear identification of designated sites is very important. Action and participation includes many people within the community: archives, museums and historical society, murals, interpretive signage, visual identification of boundaries, tours and reenactments, informative websites, and self-guided tours. Education. Murals are a very effective means of education. For example, this particular one, which speaks of the importance of the railroad in the development of the town. Interpretive signage. Here we have an aqueduct designed by a famous architect, Roebling, which has been preserved and reconstructed into a bridge across the Delaware with interpretive signage to explain to others what was here before. Commemoration. Cemeteries are a wonderful opportunity for commemoration, not only of individuals, but of periods in our history. Museum displays also are very effective. And finally, celebration, where historic reenactment brings the past to life while bringing people of all ages into the opportunity of reenacting, and also finally festivals, parades, and other opportunities for just plain fun, historically speaking, of course.
Welcome to the presentation about how to improve your community's overall impression. Hello, I'm Karen Rindall, and I've been involved with America in Bloom since 2014. 2 years ago, I served as an international judge with Communities in Bloom. First, I want to share with you a little bit of history that will give you some important insight into the overall impression criteria and why it is the way it is. The concept of a national beautification program had its origins in post-war Europe. It was initiated by Charles de Gaulle to bring French communities, particularly small villages, back from the destruction of World War II. From there, it spread to England, and then to Ireland, where the concept was and is named tidy towns. In English-speaking nations, tidiness became the lead criteria. Canada adopted this focus. From Canada, the In Bloom organization came to the U.S. The U.S. changed the title for this criteria from tidiness to overall impression, and over time has broadened the focus. Other criteria factor into the overall impression evaluation, even though they are not stated or duplicated in it. Nevertheless, for many years, it also started off the evaluation section. Recently, it moved to the end. Not that it's any less important, because in a way, it kind of integrates all the other criteria. We were really trying to have it be a more encompassing and fuller benchmarking vehicle for communities through these changes. At its essence, it can be divided into three distinct parts: maintenance, visual design direction, and visual enhancement efforts. Let's take a moment to look at maintenance. This relates directly to the old idea of tidiness I mentioned earlier. A few years ago, each of the criteria were redone, so that ordinance requirement appears at the beginning of each of the different criteria. Ordinances are a bedrock. Without them, it can be difficult to either create positive actions or to discourage negative ones. Judges will look at whether there are ordinances in place and whether they are effectively enforced. There's no point in having ordinances if there's no will or method to enforce them. This is a pretty straightforward part of the criteria. In the other metrics that are maintenance related, we're looking for things like this, and not residences like this one. We're looking for parks like this one, and not evidence of litter and graffiti like here. We're looking for nicely done signage like this example. We hope not to see signs like this that are impossible to read. In addition to having ordinances to get on top of this ongoing maintenance challenge that every community faces, there also has to be a notification network, either informal or formal, to inform a community's administration where problems might be happening and to correct them. It's not a one-size-fits-all. In small communities, just by word of mouth, things can work fine. In other larger communities that deal effectively with this challenge, there usually is a hotline established where citizens can report graffiti, broken fixtures, and crooked or missing signage. Someone has to be in charge then of regular reviews and to arrange for fixes that have been identified. No Parks and Recreation Department or other city organization can really fully meet the demands of this challenge with current staffing, even if it's a small community. So it's important that there be a group of volunteers established that can support the community administration efforts, particularly when it comes to any kind of weeding. Weeding challenges can be lessened somewhat if one takes an extra effort to identify what kinds of weeds you might actually have in the area. This is because there is a direct relationship between the type of weeds that grow and the level of soil nutrients. You might be able to reduce your overall weed situation by looking at exactly what might be lacking in the soil and by adding necessary amendments. You have ordinances, you have ongoing maintenance efforts, but for those communities that excel, a critical element in their success is to have an advance team. What do I mean by this? Here, a community member goes ahead of the judges both a few days before their actual visit and immediately before on the day of their visit. By using a tight, well-organized itinerary, they look for things that the judges might see that are out of place and remove them or fix them. This extra step of coordination helps improve scores and also plays into better evaluation tour scores. Let's look at the other piece of what can help someone excel in overall impression, which is visual design direction. We're going to talk for a minute about how you can achieve an effective and consistent design style, as noted by the arrow here in the overall impression criteria. The first step in achieving a community design style is to get consensus from the community on what your design style should be. As an example, you won't be leaving a good overall impression if you have a community in a 4-block area that has 2 different styles of light fixtures, 3 different styles of benches, and 5 different styles of community planters, and calls itself Old Town. It has modern versions of these kinds of things. There are many examples on the web to use as models for your design guidelines. Consistency here is key, not only for the overall look, but to give the community a unique appeal and often to reinforce its history. You can see here that it plays back into any kind of scoring for historic preservation. The third and final piece is enhancements. What are you doing to improve your community's overall appearance? Are you introducing public art, or are you undertaking other efforts? To take your community to the next level in overall impression, study and implement the principles of placemaking. A key resource is the organization called the Project for Public Spaces. At their website and through their publications, you can learn about how to implement enhancements of the 4 S's: sight, sound, safety, and seating, that can take your community to another level. A natural outgrowth of any design guideline effort is the installation of public art. Successful choices are most often driven by a public art committee that manages the process, as in this example from Arroyo Grande, California. Work with what you have and arrange it in a new way, and you will come up with something new and different. I encourage you to find your unique voice. Express it consistently through the visual efforts you take to enhance your community. Don't be a cookie-cutter community. You can see from these last few slides that there's literally a world of variations in how you can express yourself through public art. These are all important measures to establish a true sense of community and are vital in order to make your community a place of spirit, joy, a place worth remembering, a place worth visiting. I hope you've seen or heard something today that can help you take your community's overall impression to new heights. Thank you for listening.